Welcome back. Today I'm going to be bringing you my interior offensive line ranking for the 2026 draft. If you do enjoy the content, please consider liking and subscribing. It would be very much appreciated. Now let's jump into it. At number 8, I have Sam Hecht out of Kansas State, and I've got a day 3 evaluation on him. Sam Hecht is a pretty experienced center who does all the right things in terms of awareness and technique, but I'm just not sure he does anything that would excite me enough to want to draft him as my starting center. He's pretty rigid in terms of his movement, seems a bit off balance at times, almost as if he's playing on his toes, and he's held up fine in the Big 12, but I don't know that he possesses the physicality to consistently withstand the power of NFL defensive linemen. Like I said, super polished, great technique, always in the right place, doing the right things, and I think he could survive as a low-end starter who you look to replace in a couple of years, but I just don't know how valuable that is. At number 7, I've got Caleb Tiernan out of Northwestern, and I've got him as a day 2 evaluation. Tiernan spent 5 years in college, although only 3 were as the starter. He played left tackle for those 3 years, but his arms have been reported as below 33 inches at spring measurements in the past, and I'm not convinced by his lateral agility to cover up for this. But if you're looking for a safe guard prospect, this is not a bad option. He's not going to be the super mobile guard capable of attacking the second level with ease and putting people on their back, but he's well built, strong, he's got great technique, he gets low and drives defenders out the way, and he's got a super clean injury report. So he's not the most exciting prospect in the world, but I could easily see him being a reliable starter at guard. At number 6, I've got Jennings Dunker out of Iowa. Right from the start of his college career, injuries have been the main obstacle for Dunker, having broken his foot at the end of his high school career and requiring surgery. He then missed the following spring practice with an undisclosed injury. The season after that, he tore his labrum, and despite playing through it, he required surgery in the off-season. That brings us to 2024, where he missed 2 games due to a knee injury, and although he played through every game this year, he did pick up a couple of knocks to his lower body. So that's a lot, and I'm not convinced he has the lateral agility to play tackle like he did in college, but if he can stay healthy, I think Dunker could be an excellent guard. He seems to have really sound technique, gets low, attached to the chest, and does so with good timing. Every now and then, he'll come from the outside with his hands and allow the defender inside, but generally speaking, he's very good at extending out and keeping himself in a leveraged position. And although I don't see the mobility for him to be a successful run blocker in a wide zone type of scheme in the NFL, where he's having to attack the second level a lot, he's competitive, he's strong, he did a great job as a run blocker for Iowa, and as a pass blocker, I think he could be very reliable as well at guard, where his lateral agility will obviously be less exposed. He's got good length, a decent anchor, and really promising technique. At number 5, I've got Connor Lew out of Auburn. Having sprained his MCL in week 4 this season before tearing his ACL in week 8 and missing the rest of the year, Connor Lew's draft projection may have been pushing towards the second round had things gone a bit more in his favour. Lew has played centre for Auburn since his freshman season 3 years ago and has consistently looked like he belongs versus SEC competition. At just 305 pounds, he displays excellent mobility and will obviously be ideal for a wide zone style of offense, although his ability to move people out the way despite his lack of size is really impressive. Lew is a young prospect, but displays a veteran-like feel for space and a genuine awareness of his surroundings, allowing him to pick up on blitzing defenders early and help his offensive line stay organised. Every now and then, he gets sloppy with his technique, but generally speaking, he does a good job with hand placement. My concern, particularly for teams that don't run a lot of bootlegs, screens, RPOs, etc., where pass protection for a center isn't as valued, is that not only does he have a light frame, but he also seems to have very short arms, potentially below the 32-inch benchmark for centers. So Lew's draft projection could fluctuate quite significantly, because if there's a team that needs a center and runs an offense that suits him well enough to where he could be trusted as the long-term starter by the end of the season, then great, you could draft him in the second round. But most teams only keep one center on the roster. So if there isn't a perfect fit for a guy like Connor Lew to where a team feels comfortable with him being the long-term starter, you probably don't draft him until mid-day 3. Having said this, I do think there's enough potential destinations for it. The ones that jump out to me, for example, would be the Raiders under Clint Kubiak, or the Lions, who now have Drew Petzing calling plays and are still looking to replace Frank Ragnow. At number 4, I've got Brian Parker II out of Duke. Brian Parker II spent 4 years with Duke. He didn't get a chance to play until his second year, where he rotated between left and right tackle before cementing himself as the starter at right tackle for the 2 years following. That said, having measured in with 32 1/4 inch arms at the Shrine Bowl and weighing only 305 pounds, this is clearly a guard in the NFL, and I think he could be a really good one. With his lighter frame, he's pretty capable of getting to the second level, and what really stood out to me about Parker is that he blocks with a vengeance. Time and time again, I saw him putting people on their back, whether it was necessary or not. And again, he's not the biggest, but he packs some power in his punch, and he's got a really solid anchor. So as a guard where his length won't be as much of an issue, he's got the physicality that you're looking for both in the run game and in pass pro, and he ties it together with great technique. Really good timing, gets low, resets his hands, all that good stuff. The only thing that isn't ideal about his technique is that he's a real leaner. He could do with having some more control in the way he blocks, as opposed to just throwing all his weight at the opponent on every single block, because as much as it often ends up with the opponent on the ground, he also often ends up on the ground, and sometimes he hasn't brought the guy down with him. But his strength, combined with his finish the play attitude and a clean injury report, should make him a reliable guard in the NFL, with experience at tackle that could allow him to provide depth in that position as well. At number 3, I've got Emmanuel Pregnon out of Oregon, and I've got a second round evaluation on him, but he is knocking on the doorstep of being someone who I would be willing to draft with a first round pick. Emmanuel Pregnon is a gritty, powerful guard. His anchor is phenomenal, and although every now and then he gets sloppy, I thought his technique, generally speaking, was excellent. He stays low and not only displays good hand placement, but constantly resets them and attacks with a feisty playstyle that makes the defender feel like they're the one on the back foot. Where he doesn't exactly excel is mobility. Pregnon struggles to trundle down the field and continue to help his back in a zonal run play call, and every now and then this shows up in his pass protection as well, as he'll find himself too flat-footed to shift across laterally or ends up falling to the ground too easily. But I think particularly for a team that likes to run a gap scheme, this guy fits seamlessly into the offensive line and brings some real juice to the interior. After 6 years in college, Pregnon is an older prospect, but you're also getting a polish and pro readiness that comes along with that. At number 2, I've got Chase Bisontis out of Texas A&M, and I've got a first round evaluation on him. Bisontis definitely has some things to work on, but this is someone we could be talking about in a year or two as one of the best guards in the NFL because his physical traits are exceptional. Having competed in the SEC as well as facing a highly talented Miami defensive line in his final game for Texas A&M, Bisontis not only physically holds up against strong competition, but stands out. First of all, his movement skills are excellent. He can explode off the line and attack the second level in an instant, but he can also slide laterally with ease and consistently helps on more than one assignment on a single snap as he slides around the line covering for his teammates. What makes his movement skills so exciting though is the power he combines them with. It's a great anchor with good length, and again, he's not been facing weak competition in college, but he was legitimately moving people out the way and creating significant holes for his back to attack. Having started his college career at right tackle, Bisontis moved all the way over to left guard and has stuck there for the last 2 seasons, but is clearly still figuring out his technique. Whilst often displaying advanced flashes in the way he controls his opponent's hands with a chop or a subtle grab, his initial hand placement can be sloppy. It's either too wide, too high, or sometimes a bit of both. He also gets caught square, overcommitting his hips and being beaten inside. Bisontis, however, continues to show potential as he often resurrects his initial slip-in technique by resetting his hands and re-establishing a strong position. But as shown in his game versus Miami, where at times he encountered high-profile edge prospects Ruben Bain Jr. and Akeem Mesidor, if his initial hand placement is sloppy in the NFL, good defenders will already be on the quarterback before he can make an adjustment. So far from a perfect prospect, but a big part of my philosophy for offensive linemen is that the guys who have exceptional physical traits have a lot more chance to develop good habits in the NFL, as they won't feel as out of depth as the guys who just can't hold up physically. At number 1, I've got Olivai Vega Ioane out of Penn State. Of the players I've looked at so far, Vega Ioane might be the one I'm most confident is going to be a good NFL player. At 324 pounds, he's obviously not going to be the most explosive getting to the second level, but he's got very smooth movement skills, always seems to be in control of his body, and he pairs this with excellent feel for how the run is developing and how he can help his back find space. This awareness translates into pass pro as well, as he does a great job in zone protection, switching across the line from man to man with perfect timing. And it's in pass protection where he really shows how valuable he could be. Ioane possesses a thick build and a phenomenal anchor, and despite appearing to have underwhelming length, it's incredibly rare to see him out-leveraged due to incredible consistency and efficiency in his technique. Not only does he always seem to get underneath and attack with timing and precision, but it's a constant, fluid process of resetting his hands with every movement the defender makes. On top of this, Ioane shows a veteran-like savvy in some of the subtle ways he'll limit his opponent's threat, like grabbing or chopping at his wrists at the right time. Teams will have somewhat of a philosophy question to answer in terms of how high you're willing to draft a guard, but if you're looking to sturdy up your interior, I can't blame anyone for going in the direction of Ioane. So the interior obviously isn't as valued as the guys who can protect your edge, but continuing in what seems to be a trend in this draft, of the lesser valued positions being the stronger groups, I think the high end here is phenomenal, and in a weaker class it would be interesting to see how early teams are willing to pull the trigger on a couple of these guys at the top, because if you draft Vega Ioane, I think there's a really good chance that you've got a guard spot filled in for the next 5 to 10 years, and that is presumably more valuable than an edge player, for example, who could be a good starter for your team but needs to work on some things, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And then Chase Bisontis, I think, has huge upside. Emmanuel Pregnon, I think you're getting a really solid guard. And then you've got that next tier down of Brian Parker II, Connor Liu, and Jennings Dunker, I think could all become really solid interior pieces for an offensive line. But that's all from me. I think I'll be bringing you wide receivers next, and there is quite a few to get through, so bear with me, it might be an extra day or two, but wide receivers are always a lot of fun. If you did enjoy the content, please consider liking and subscribing, it would be very much appreciated, and I'll see you next time.